After everything that happened in my last story, I truly believed I was finally free from my entitled family. I had bailed my brother out of jail, suffered years of mistreatment, and endured the kind of family betrayal most people wouldn't even believe. But I thought it was over. My brother got married a year later. My parents seemed too busy with their life to interfere with mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I had no reason to stay connected to them, so I walked away, determined to rebuild my own life. I focused on myself, working tirelessly, saving every penny, and after 7 years of struggle, I finally did it. I bought my own house. My own safe space, a home I earned with no help from them. I had spent my entire life being overlooked, treated as less important, and made to feel like I didn't belong. But now? This was mine. My hard work had finally paid off, and I felt like I could finally close that chapter of my life for good. But just when I thought I was finally free, they came back. Out of nowhere. After years of silence, my parents showed up at my doorstep, not to apologize, they were not to make amends, but to demand. And what they wanted from me this time. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. If you thought what they did before was bad, just wait until you hear what happened next. Because according to them, the house I worked so hard to buy, the one I sacrificed years of my life for, wasn't mine at all. In their eyes, it was only a matter of time before my brother took his rightful place in it. And they were prepared to do whatever it took to make that happen. My entitled family wants to take my house and give it to my brother, even though they kicked me out. Dear friends, before we continue, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for your incredible support. My channel is so far along, reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your help means everything to me. Please hit subscribing below, your support truly makes a huge difference. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of my channel journey. Now, back to the story. When my brother got married, my mom told me, we need to expand the bedroom for brother, so your dad and me want to combine your room and brother to make his room bigger. You should think your brother first. The moment my mom told me that, I made a decision. I moved out. It sounds like they try to kick me out of the house. Okay, it's fine. I'm done with the toxic cycle, done with the manipulation, done with the family that had never once chosen me. I walked away, determined to build something for myself, something real. On that day, I promised myself I wouldn't waste another moment hoping they would change. I was done being the afterthought. I threw myself into building a future, working relentlessly to create something that was truly mine. Every dollar I earned, I saved. Every opportunity for overtime, I took. I skipped vacations, cut back on luxuries, and sacrificed more than I care to admit, all for one dream, a home of my own. A place where no one could tell me I wasn't welcome. And after 7 years of relentless effort, I finally did it. I signed the deed. I had my private place with a nice house to stay. It was more than just a house, it was proof. Proof that I could stand on my own, that I had built something from the ground up without their help. For the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. Independent. Finally free. But peace never lasts long when you have a family like mine. Just as I was beginning to enjoy my hard-earned peace, they came back. After years of silence, my parents showed up at my doorstep, not with apologies, not to make amends, but with demands. They didn't congratulate me on my success, they didn't ask how I was doing. Instead, they came with an outrageous expectation, one that sent my blood boiling. According to them, my house, the home I fought so hard for, wasn't really mine at all. They had decided that my brother, their golden child, needed it more than I did. And they weren't just asking. They were demanding. Then Mom called and said they wanted to visit my house since we hadn't connected in a long time. At first, they acted like they genuinely wanted to reconnect, smiling too widely, asking forced, awkward questions. My mother beamed, my father barely spoke, and my brother had that same smug look he always wore when he was about to get his way. Something felt off. And then I realized why. My mother started wandering through my house like she was inspecting a real estate listing. She ran her fingers along the furniture, peeked into rooms, and nodded approvingly. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she turned to me and said my brother had a big family now. He has 5 kids. They needed more space. I should give them the house. I froze. What? I thought maybe I had misheard her. Maybe this was some kind of twisted joke. But the calm, expectant look on her face told me otherwise. My brother, he is still the golden child," he smirked and his expression dripped with smug satisfaction. "Come on, man," he said, his voice thick with entitlement. "You're single. You don't need all this space, and your niece and nephews need a bigger home to stay, brother." And just like that, I realized their visit had nothing to do with family. This wasn't about making amends. This was about talking. "We're family. Family helps each other, right?" my mother added, her voice coated in forced sympathy. I felt my stomach twist. The manipulation, the guilt-tripping, it was the same playbook they had used my whole life. Where was this family when I needed help? I shot back. "You had no problem kicking me out when it was convenient for you." My mother sighed dramatically, shaking her head as if I was the unreasonable one. "That was different," she said quickly. "We didn't have space back then." I let out a hollow laugh. "And now that I have space, you think you can just take it from me?" Her face hardened. "You're selfish for keeping this house to yourself," she sneered. "Your nieces and nephews are growing, where will they sleep?" "That's not my problem," I snapped. "I worked for this house. I didn't steal it. I didn't have it handed to me. I sacrificed years of my life for it." I could see my brother getting annoyed. His entitlement had always been reinforced by my mom and my dad. He had spent his whole life getting exactly what he wanted, always backed by our parents. "You don't even need all this space," he scoffed. "You could just move into a smaller place. Or go back to the old house." I squared my shoulders, my stance firm and unshaken. "This is my house," I said, my voice steady. "I earned for it. Every drop of sweat, every struggle, I earned this, and I'm not giving it up. That's what I do." My father, who had been quiet the entire time, suddenly spoke up. "This is an opportunity for you to give back to your family," he said sternly. "Your brother is struggling. He has 5 kids to take care of. Don't you think it's the right thing to do?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And where was that right thing to do when I was sleeping in my car? I asked. Where was this family loyalty when I needed a place to stay? Silence. For the first time, I saw it in their eyes, realization. I wasn't the weak, obedient son they had always controlled. But one thing was clear. They weren't going to take an "no" for an answer. My mother's face twisted in disbelief. My brother's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" He snapped. "You heard me," I said, my voice steady. "This house is mine. I worked for it. And I'm not giving it to anyone. There is my final stand." I knew this wasn't over. But I also knew one thing for certain. I wasn't that helpless kid anymore. A few days after my last conversation with my mom, I thought it was finally over. But I was wrong. After a long day at work, I pulled into my driveway and immediately felt something was off. A moving truck was parked right in front of my house. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. As I got closer, my worst fears were confirmed. My brother, Michael, and his wife were unloading boxes into my house. I stood there for a moment, frozen in disbelief. Then, Michael walked in with a smug grin, looking like he had already won. "Mom said once we settled in, you had agreed," he said casually. "Thanks, bro." His wife stood beside him, her expression gleeful, like she had just won the lottery. Looking at them, I realized they had never even considered me in this equation. I was just an obstacle to be dealt with. Rage boiled inside me. "What the hell do you think you're doing in my house?" I demanded. Michael shrugged like it was no big deal. "We need a place to stay. Mom and Dad said this was the best solution. I mean, it's not like you need all these rooms. There is no need to wait for long." I pulled out my phone and dialed the police right in front of them. And that's when Michael's wife started crying. Sobbing, wailing, like I was the one ruining her life. "How could you be so heartless?" she gasped between exaggerated sobs, clutching her chest like she was the true victim. "We have 5 kids. Are you really going to leave us out on the street with nowhere to go?" Within minutes, my parents barged into my house like they had every right to be there. My mom wasted no time putting on her fake sympathetic voice. "What's done is done," she cooed. "They've already moved in. Just let it go. Why are you making this a big deal?" But I wasn't backing down. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to decide what happens in my house. Get out, now." Within minutes, the police arrived and immediately ordered them to leave the house. "You've ruined my life," he shouted as the officers told them to leave. "My kids need your help. You could have done something decent for once." His wife clung to him, still sobbing, while my mom shot me a furious glare. "Are you trying to tear our family apart?" she continued. "You're selfish and heartless." Selfish? And heartless? My mom repeated that word again. The same one they'd used my whole life whenever I refused to let them walk all over me. But the police didn't care about their theatrics. They ordered them all to leave my property. Michael had no choice but to start loading the boxes back onto the moving truck, his face burning with rage. His kids cried, his wife mumbled curses under her breath, and my mom shook her head like I was the one who had betrayed them. As the police stood firm, ensuring they had no choice but to leave, my mother turned to me one last time, her voice dripping with disbelief and indignation. "I can't believe you actually called the police on your own family. You're no longer part of this family," she spat, as if that was supposed to hurt me. I let out a dry chuckle, shaking my head. "Finally," I said, my voice laced with exhaustion rather than anger. "All because I refused to give my house to your golden child. He's always been the favorite. Guess I was never really part of this family to begin with." My father looked away, saying nothing, and my mother's expression hardened. They had lost control over me, and they knew it. The police motioned toward the exit, and my parents had no choice but to comply. Just as they reached the edge of my driveway, my brother turned back, his face red with frustration. "You'll regret this," he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped back inside, grabbed the door handle, and without another word, slammed the door shut. For the first time, it truly felt like my home. After that night, I did the only thing left to do. I blocked my family and went full no contact. No more guilt trips, no more manipulation, no more being the backup plan whenever my brother failed. I didn't have to reach out to know how things were going. Words got around. The same family members who used to pressure me to help my brother were now whispering about his downfall. His finances collapsed under the weight of 5 kids and no stability. His wife, who once sneered at me like I was beneath them, started complaining that she deserved better and threatened to leave. And my parents? The ones who had spent their entire lives bending over backward for their golden child. Even they were turning on him, finally realizing that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the golden success story they had always believed. And while their world crumbled, mine flourished. I had my home, my independence, my peace. I had built everything on my own, and no one could take it from me. They wanted to take my house, I thought, a smirk playing at my lips. Instead, they lost me forever. Now, let me ask you, what would you have done in my situation? If your own family came back after years of ignoring you, demanding the very thing you worked so hard for, how would you have handled it? Would you have stood your ground, or given in just to keep the peace? Have you ever dealt with entitled family members like this? Maybe a sibling who always got special treatment. Or parents who expected you to sacrifice everything because it was the right thing to do? I'd love to hear your experiences. Drop a comment below. If this ordeal taught me anything, it's that family isn't an excuse for entitlement. Just because we share blood doesn't mean I owe them my success. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's survival. And sometimes, walking away is the best thing you can do. And if you think the story was crazy, you need to see how it all started. Go watch my first video, "No One Wants You Here," where my own family kicked me out like I was nothing. Trust me, once you see the full picture, you'll understand just how deep their entitlement ran.